Hi and welcome, my name is Lawrence Baker and this video is going to be a guide or a primer on selections, masks and channels. To make sure we're working from the same place, image, mode, you're working in RGB colour space, red, green and blue, and I've turned this image from 16-bit into 8 bits per channel, and that channel bit is quite important to understand and I'll come to that in a minute. So here's my image. Make sure window channels is ticked. So the first channel is called the composite channel because it combines red, green and blue. The red channel, the green channel and blue channel are grayscale versions of the image. So it appears, but what is actually happening is this. Imagine a red light shining through this sheet of acetate that looks like this. The brighter it is, the more red light will get through. The darker it is, the less likely the red light is to get through. It's in fact a mask for the red channel. I mix red and blue, I get magenta. Red and green, I get yellow. So that's how it all really works. You've got these masks, red, green and blue, dictating how much of each channel's light gets through. It's very straightforward when you think about it like that because it's a mask. It's no different to any other type of mask. So make sure you've got that ticked again. Sometimes you can have problems with channels where you'll see the ruby lith overlay and it means you've got an alpha channel selected and it can throw you and annoy you, but just go back into the channels panel and click on the RGB one. So if I copy now red to the new channel icon, that is not a copy of the red channel, but it is, but it isn't the red channel anymore. It is now an alpha channel, and alpha channels are masks. So you can only play around with luminosity when you're working with anything outside of red, green and blue. So I could use the red copy now, knowing that that would be most of that sunset there as a mask or a layer mask when I'm using an adjustment layer, for instance, to put a photo filter on. So if I did that for you now and clicked on the load channel as selection, or command control clicked on it, either or. Then I went back to layers with this image. See, I had that red showing there. I just clicked on the image there to get rid of that ruby lith overlay because I probably had that selected with the other channels as well. So if I went to put, let's say, a photo filter on, which I'm going to do now, when you've got a selection showing and you put an adjustment layer on, automatically it becomes the layer mask. So there, that photo filter has shown up. You can see I'm making the sky and generally the image, quite a lot of it, much, much warmer using that photo filter by using a copy of the red channel as a mask, which is an alpha channel now. So let's Command Z on that a few times to get back to where we were. Command and Control D to lose a selection. Very important keyboard shortcut, Command or Control D. I've still not explained totally what's going on. So each channel in an 8-bit image contains between 0 for black and 255 for white levels of luminosity. So 256 levels of luminosity. Take away pure black and white, so 254 levels of grey per channel. So it's 8 bits per channel image. Calculator 256 times 256 times 256 and an 8-bit per channel image equals 16,777,216 colours or a palette of colours you can have in an 8-bit per channel image. So that is normally, an 8-bit image would normally be a JPEG, for instance, because it cannot be anything else but 8-bit. So I used 8-bit to make my life easier for the calculation. So that's what's going on really. So every channel here can contain 256 levels of luminosity. And it's the same for the alpha channels, like the red copy here. If I click the new channel icon now, I get an alpha channel. So I can use a brush, B for brush, black for my foreground color. I can actually paint in that alpha mask. That's now a mask. I can load that up by Command or Control clicking or clicking on this icon here. You can access it from the select menu under load selection as well. So it'll be there as well, alpha 1, or you can pick another one, of course, as well, like red copy. So now if I went to layers, notice that Rubylith overlay, sometimes you have to click because I probably had that selected. So when you come to layers, you have to click on the thumbnail to lose that Rubylith or red overlay on the layer there. So if I now put a layer mask on by coming to this icon here, I've got a mask created like that. If I turn that off, you can see what I've done basically. So it's kind of logical now, if you were to paint into a mask, you would have to use black or white at the very least, or shades of grey. Now, most people, when they're painting a mask, will use black and white, and that's D for default colours and X to swap them around. So D for black and white, D for white in the foreground, black in the background, X to swap them around. That can apply to any foreground and background colours, the X, but you would work swapping them around. So if I went and Alt clicked on that now to select, or Option click to select that layer mask, I can paint in it with white, let's say, or black to change what's there and do all sorts of things, and use black again. So then you would probably use the brush, I'm on the pencil actually, use the brush with changes of opacity or flow, etc. So painting into a mask is quite common, but obviously it's always going to be about grey. So even if I selected a colour like pink there, it will turn to grey because, you know, you cannot have anything but the 256 levels of luminosity, which is, as far as we're concerned, inside a mask, black or white and shades of grey, etc. So that's how you paint into a mask. Now notice that mask is there. It will appear in the channels as well. So no matter what, if you've got a mask, it's a layer mask or any other kind of mask, it has to appear in the channels. So back to layers and back to this, and I'm going to right click and delete the layer mask. You can shift click on it to temporarily disable it. If you right click, you can do enable it, etc. Right click again, you can delete it as well. So selections are masks. They don't look like it, but they are. As far as Photoshop is concerned, a selection is a mask. So if I come up to the marquee tool here, check its, or reset it to defaults here, come to the preset manager and reset the tool. If now I draw a marquee, that is a mask. The reason we have selections is to allow you to see what's going on. If you just saw black and white, you wouldn't be able to work. So Command and Control D to lose that selection. If I put a layer mask on, which is a hide all one, which we now know is black, if I put that on and went Alt or Option click on it to work in it, that's what it would be like if you didn't have selections. You'll be sort of playing around in the dark, so to speak. So to make your life easier, delete that now, which is right click, delete layer mask. To make your life easier, we have selections so you can see through and see what's going on. You wouldn't be able to select anything properly because you have these grayscale things and black and pure white, etc. So you need to see through to select things. So that's all a selection is. It's a mask that's, you're only seeing a dotted line for the outside, the marching ants as they call it. So that's really what a selection is. It's a mask. If, there's a little caveat here, if I had lots of feather on that, something ridiculous like 600, and then went to do that, I'll get warned. No pixels are more than 50% selected. The selection edges will not be visible. You can select part of a pixel. What it's saying here is, if it's less than 50% overall, because your marquee is so small, but you want 600 pixels of feather, which is softening at the edges, I can't show you the selection, but it is there. So if I go OK and put a layer mask on now, which I now know will incorporate the selection when I put the layer mask on, if I Alt click on it, there was my selection. It's far too soft for the marching ants to work because they need more than 50% of each pixel at the edge selected. It's too soft, it can't do it. So you end up with a selection you can't see. That's one little caveat about selections. Most of the time you won't encounter that. So right click, delete layer mask. So I'm not going to go through any other selection tools because this is a primer. I wanted you to understand what's going on. So to recap, in the channels, red, green and blue are just masks, allowing light through, red, green and blue light through. Anything beyond that is an alpha channel, and that means it's a luminosity mask, really, because it will always be about luminosity. There's a little bit of confusion here when I say luminosity mask because they're used for in landscape photography, for instance, to isolate portions of an image based on luminosity. So really, a mask is always about luminosity, but luminosity masks in that context are something totally different. I have done a video on it, link above and below. I've also done a video on the magic wand, which I think is greatly underrated. Now, the selection tools are many. We've got the marquee tools here, the lasso tools there, quick selection and magic wand. Then in the select menu, we've got color range and focus area. When you're working with masks, I would say it's the most difficult thing to get right in Photoshop. I can judge the expertise of someone in Photoshop on how they mask. You can even inside an alpha channel like this here, or a layer mask or whatever, you can even use things like the blur tool and smudge tool to smudge your mask to get it to work, because manipulating masks can be really difficult. Also, under image, we've got calculations, and I've done a video on that as well, and you can use channels using calculations to create masks. Now, if you see someone take a woman with flyaway hair or a girl or whatever, I'm not saying that it's always girls with flyaway hair, by the way. Men can have flyaway hair, and it's on a straightforward coloured background, let's say pure white. Masking that is, really easy. So showing that to people is really sort of misleading them, because masking can be really difficult. Take someone with multicoloured flyaway hair on a multicoloured background and actually select that out. That is really, really difficult. There's also something down here called quick mask, which we used to use a lot in the early days of Photoshop. Make sure my channels are right, because I've probably got something selected. So you can see the problems you get there when you're clicking on different channels and going back in. See that red there? That says you've actually got that selected. You really want the RGB channel selected, so just click on that. So what I'm getting at is there's so much you need to understand to really sort of refine mask, and there's a lot going on. And if it looks too easy, then really they're putting the wool over your eyes, because masking can be really difficult to achieve sometimes. So you need to have a great understanding of Photoshop to get a mask in every situation. I hope I covered everything. There's a few keyboard shortcuts I think you need to know. Marquee now, Command and Control D to deselect. When you're painting inside a mask, you need to be using default colors. D on your keyboard for black in the foreground, white in the background. X to swap them around, because when you're painting in a mask, it's best to use black and white, but vary when you're using the brush, let's say, the opacity or flow. I can't think of anything else for keyboard shortcuts other than, let's say, command clicking on a channel to load it as a selection. The same applies to the red channel, the green channel, and the blue channel, or come here and click on that to load it as a selection. Quickly, just one little thing here. Let's go back to the layers here and make sure I've got them all showing like so. So you get these problems, you just have to overcome them. That was the problem. I had the eyeball on that. You'll see the Rubylith overlay. That's Rubylith overlay. If you double click on this quick mask icon here, that is dictated by that. I don't recommend changing that around. Of course, you problems, masks and selected areas. The color you can change yourself, but personally, I don't touch it. Some people do, I don't. When you're using these tools here, you'll see that, which is the new one, that is to add. Let me just reset this tool here. Sorry about this. Go back to it. And now I'll create a new one anyway. So that is new. That is add. If you mouse over them, it'll tell you what's going on. Add to selection. That's to subtract. So now I subtract from that bit there. That's to intersect. And that means, as it looks, if I went like that, I'll be left with a very small selection, like so. Keyboard shortcuts for add are Shift key pressed. But notice the cursor has a plus sign, so that's adding. Press the Alt or Option key to subtract. And I'm trying to remember the intersect one. I think it's Shift and Alt or Option. Yes, it is. See the cross symbol? So that would be an intersection. That's it, guys. I don't want to go any further than that. I'm going to cover masking and selections and some of the tools in much greater detail. Yeah, select subject and select a mask on another video. That select a mask workspace is vast, and I honestly don't want to go into it now because, we're running out of time basically. But I really want to sort of take you through a normal, what I call relatively easy masking tutorial using Select and Mask Workspace. So that will be my next video, some form of masking and selection, and then using the Select and Mask Workspace. That's it, guys. Thank you very much.